So Lisa, you know that I always want to make movies and I always want to make documentaries, right?
Yeah, those are the two main things I know about you.
Well, I have like this idea for a documentary. It's because I'm going stir crazy at home, and I was thinking that we could like maybe make a documentary with people in their own homes where we get to film them doing like especially single people who have pets. I would love to know how the pets have become basically like even more their human companions as we've reached the 7th month of the pandemic. So like basically like how much they like dress up their animals more, how they like have them sitting at the table having like their coffee together. Like, do they have a ritual for like they have to have 5 kisses before they go to sleep?
I think that sounds like an amazing documentary, and I gotta tell you, I have an idea of how you might get that made.
Okay, tell me.
Yeah, so, well, before we get started here, we do want to tell you about what our friends at StoryHive are doing. Now, if you're unfamiliar with who that is, since 2013, TELUS StoryHive has funded productions and supported emerging filmmakers with mentorship and guidance from the National Screen Institute and brought hundreds of films to life from creators in Western Canada. Now, StoryHive is committed to supporting underrepresented filmmakers and stories, which is why we want you to jump on this opportunity.
So like I would count, I think. And also I love the idea that like this documentary edition of StoryHive is all about local heroes. And honestly, like there's nothing more heroic. Can you imagine how cute it would be to have like people who run foster care stuff for kittens, having like what their little tea parties might look like because they're so bored at home alone? That would be so good. They are looking for documentary pitches from British Columbia and Alberta residents that highlight extraordinary citizens in your community, big or small. Successful pitches will receive $20,000 and customized mentorship to produce the project. Applications are open until October 7th at noon Pacific, and you can check out all the eligibility requirements and apply now on storyhive.com.
You're listening to Pop This, the podcast where two women talk about everything pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen and Andrea Warner.
So here we are. I don't know what science fiction movie we want to use to mark time. Handmaid's Tale, a Mad Max movie. I don't know what, like, we're in our year of our Lord 9,406. I don't know.
Yeah, it's day like 1100 of the pandemic, the usual.
Yeah, and things have got a bit worse.
Supremely gotten worse, yeah.
Yeah, and now we all don't know what we're doing. I don't know if I should get out there and buy canned goods again because I've gone through all of mine, finally. I mean, there's a couple of lingering chickpea cans in the back of the cupboard, but...
You did such a good job with your beans.
I love beans, and I really did. There were flats of beans I was buying. They're gone now.
How are you going to do that, though? You have a broken foot.
You can order, right? That infrastructure is set up, right? You can start to...
Now is a great time to order your beans, yeah.
Here's the other thing, too, that I think is interesting, that because I don't want to say there's no news, because obviously there's news, because we have COVID still, but other things are not happening. So when you're listening to the news and they're telling you that this year's Bordeaux run will be decided on a phone-in or in a computer program, usually people are lining up outside, but because of COVID, they can't line up. I'm like, why do I need to know this?
It is.
Anyone here gonna get into the Bordeaux lineup?
But like, it's so wild to me that like that sort of like, I mean, really like, and I get it, I guess, like everyone has their thing, but like there are so many bad things going on in the world. And I have to say, if you are lining up for like Bordeaux, that's thousands and thousands of dollars, that's also a very bad thing. Like that is, that is not good. Do not do that, please.
No, I'm gonna have to. I don't. Yeah. So I there's something I'm missing. I mean, but then everyone is, right? So
Your Bordeaux run?
My Bordeaux run is off this year. So perhaps while we're updating everyone on COVID, I'll update everyone on my foot situation.
Oh, yes,
which is
please.
that nothing is happening at all. It is. I held it up for everyone to see, though. Did you enjoy seeing it?
Yeah,
You know
it was shocking.
No, I didn't like that at all. I don't like
like looking at people's feet.
It felt a bit too intimate, actually, and I was the one that asked.
My
I was
foot.
the one that asked for it. Yeah,
So people are barefoot all the time.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it was too intimate.
Wow.
I
Did
didn't have a problem with the intimacy. I just don't like looking at feet. However, what I will say is I was very impressed with your flexibility. I think your hip flexors are really open, and you just swung that foot up over that desk like nobody's business.
Yeah. No. So now I've got my. Can you see this? No, you can't see the scooter. I could maybe. Let me see.
Are you showing us your foot again? Don't show me your foot.
Oh, I
There it
see.
is.
Oh,
you got
the scooter.
Yeah, you got little scoots tucked behind you. That's nice.
Yeah. There you go.
Hey, are you upstairs or downstairs?
I am upstairs. I'm not going to try and go downstairs. It's all stairs. Have you noticed how many stairs I have in my house?
Well, it's an intense stair to go downstairs, but
It really is.
What are you watching TV on? What are you
I
watching?
brought the TV upstairs now.
Ah, okay. All right.
So I got a situation happening up here now. Where it's
you got an entanglement with your TV?
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's all very cozy.
Isn't it so weird to think that entanglement as like a pop culture reference was only like 6 weeks ago? Doesn't that feel
Is this
like
the
a million?
Jada Pinkett? And
Yeah.
yes,
But doesn't that feel like a million years ago that we found out that like that Jada and Will brought themselves to the red table? Like that feels so long ago.
Are they still doing the red table, or is that the last red table? It felt like that ended things.
No, she's got like a whole series. Like that's coming back. It's
it is
seasons.
coming back. Oh, okay. I was just like, I hadn't heard of another one because that was a real kind of.
I mean, that's a mic drop on a season, like, and you leave that for like 6 weeks and then you come back to it, I think.
Do you think that word came to her like spontaneously, or do you think she worked up to find like, this is happening, I'm going to have to describe this thing somehow, and I'm going to go with entanglements?
It was on
purpose.
Purpose.
It's definitely on
You
purpose.
think she thought it up?
Yeah. Oh,
Or
yeah.
I think her marketing team helped her think up that word and the full story around it.
Like Jada's really into a lot of self-help stuff, and entanglement is such a perfect euphemism for the emotional complexity and the like sexual complexity of the situation she was in. And like I really props to her and her team. Entanglement was chef's kiss euphemism.
I did see
was
someone
going on.
tweet a picture of like some iPhone headphones and went, "This is an entanglement."
No, but I wouldn't mind a pandemic entanglement. Like, like I did try to date online.
And what happened?
Well, I went on I went on a Zoom date, and then with the same person we went to Trout Lake for a picnic the week after, kind of social distance picnic. And then he texted me and told me that he thought about our first Zoom date and then our picnic, and then with COVID, and that he really didn't feel like there was a match for him. And so he just he did offer that we could have a quick third Zoom date to say goodbye.
Sorry, did you want a quick third Zoom date to say goodbye?
Yeah, I appreciate, he's mindful. He also wasn't going to be my type, but I guess I was wanting the entanglement, like the pieces of entanglement, but I knew being in phase 1 and being social distance that really there was not going to be any kind of sexual entanglement, but it was just like, let me see what's out there, and
Sure. How do you feel about phone sex with strangers?
Probably probably I'm not going to do that either. And no phone entanglement. But I did try.
What about a pen pal, like in prison or something, but not?
Yeah, but listen, I went on 3 dates. One I did the third one was an artist / instructor, and he just wanted to talk about his psychotic, and I put in quotation marks, wife, right, for an hour and a bit. And that was awkward, like to the point where he needed to put his kids to bed but wanted to call me back.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Like you basically should end up being a witness for her in the divorce proceedings.
Yeah,
like,
you should have probably got paid for therapy.
Pretty much. And that there was a baby at a wedlock with some Irish guy. And so there was this whole kind of soap opera one. So I did stay on. I did let him call me back after he put the kids to bed.
So you are looking for an entanglement.
Yeah,
sure,
I mean, not really, but it was just like, that was my entanglement. That was the closest to my phone sex was, hearing about, how horny this guy was over on Bowen Island. And then the third one was this guy, he had some good pictures because remember I was a casting director. So
sure, yeah.
I can cast these dates. And he liked my COVID curves. And so I'm like, that's a win.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, yeah, we could have a Zoom date, but let's Google each other first. Right. And he was more than happy to say that he, give me his name. And then when I Googled him, he ran for the Conservative Party in Prince George.
Oh my God.
And is the CEO of some, clean energy. And again, I'm using my air quotes.
Oh,
wow.
Okay.
And I said to him, our politics are complete opposite. And I said, I was in my picture, I have a decolonizer t-shirt. It says decolonizer on it. That might have given you a little bit of a heads up.
Does he even know what the word means?
Well, he did tell me that he has friends on the spectrum of the political spectrum.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was his last ditch attempt. And then I was just like, come on. And so there was no Zoom date. So anyway, I deleted my profile after that. I was just like,
Fair.
I'm not.
You gave it a good shot.
And you know what? There is some decent hookups in Lovecraft country, even if we're not going to talk about them specifically tonight. But I'm so excited to get into this. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
I'm Andrea Gin.
And with us tonight, we're so excited. Oh, yeah, you're listening to Pop This as well. But with us tonight, we're so excited. We have Natasha Tony joining us again.
Yay!
Now, it's much more fun to all be together, but, we're zooming here.
But this really is a pandemic. This is a pandemic highlight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
for us as well.
For us, every week to have this is a definite lifeline, honestly, like it really is.
Yeah,
Agreed,
there's definitely like something like very stabilizing and grounding about having weekly like things to do, and see people's faces, which is really nice.
Absolutely.
And then something to watch, something to think about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so with Lovecraft, thank you for inviting me. Yeah.
That's great.
And this is how many visits now? How many appearances have you made? 34? Is it 3 or 4?
This might be 4.
Might be 4.
It's 4.
3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough that I feel super comfortable.
Great. Get in there. I am going to read your bio. Natasha Tony is the founder and CEO of Elevate Inclusive Strategies. With decades of experience in labor relations and film and television, Natasha brings a keen sense of fairness and sensitivity to intersectionality and is a thought leader on themes of activism, equity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine you've been crazy busy in the last 6 months.
It's been, with the pandemic, March, everything stopped. And I thought, lost all my money and all my contracts. As soon as phase 2 opened up, my contracts came back. But it was really the Black Square Tuesday, when organizations posted the Black Square in solidarity for Black lives, and then got called out.
Yes.
And so taking it from performative to transformative is what the conversations have been all summer and into fall, where folks have been called to action, and we're doing a lot of work.
Yeah, and a lot of really incredible work, and I am just so grateful for everything that you do and all of your posts and all of like the different events that I've seen you speak at. It's been really wonderful.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
We're talking about Lovecraft Country, and I mean, it's one of the most highly anticipated TV shows of the summer. I'm going to read a bit of the background, and then I'll throw to Lisa for the episode 1 plot summary, and then AG for episode 2 plot summary, if that's okay. We're only talking about the first 2 episodes in this. So if you're like listening, and you're like, oh my God, I can't listen because I'm not caught up, don't worry. We're just going to talk about the first 2 episodes. So Lovecraft Country is an American horror drama television series developed by Misha Green based on the 2016 novel of the same name by Matt Ruff. It premiered on August 16th, 2020 on HBO. And so just a bit of background about the book. The book Lovecraft Country is a 2016 dark fantasy horror novel told in sort of 8 interconnected stories, exploring the conjunction between the horror fiction of H.R. Lovecraft and racism in, or H.P. Lovecraft, my God, sorry about that, H.P. Lovecraft and racism in the United States during the era of Jim Crow laws, as experienced by Black science fiction fan Atticus Turner and his family. So that's the book. The TV series follows Atticus Turner as a young Black man who travels across the segregated 50s United States in search of his missing father, learning of dark secrets plaguing a town on which famous horror writer H.P. Lovecraft supposedly based the location of many of his fictional tales. And just because I think it's important to note these things, Matt Ruff, who wrote the book, is a white man. Misha Green, who developed the TV show, is an African-American woman.
Yes. To all of that. Should I read the plot summary then?
Yeah, why don't you do episode 1 and then AG can do episode 2.
Okay, and I just want to say, so for me, I read the book.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I read the book because I saw a tweet that said Jordan Peele had agreed to produce a miniseries of Lovecraft Country, and I'd never heard of that before. So I called our local Pulp Fiction, got the book, and read it a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I've been very much waiting to see this. But
and
okay.
What did you think of the book?
Oh, I mean, I never read anything like it before. It was a great book. It's a real page-turner, and yeah, and I can definitely see why. I don't know how it got into Jordan Peele's hand. Matt Ruff just lives in Seattle. And actually at Pulp Fiction, they were telling me he comes in quite often. So,
oh, well.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. No, I thought it was a great book. And, part of me, I can see why it's a miniseries and not a movie, because there's a lot in there. There's too much almost.
There's so much in the first episode.
Yeah.
That's why I really wanted us to just focus on 2, because, like, how do you even talk about this thing? It's huge.
Exactly. All right. So for episode 1, plot summary. After arriving in Chicago, Korean War veteran Atticus Freeman, played by Jonathan Majors, finds a letter from his missing father, Montrose, inviting him to discover his family legacy in Ardham, Massachusetts. Atticus, his uncle George, played by Courtney B. Vance, who writes a Green Book-style black travel guide, and his friend Letty, Journey Smollett, set off on a road trip. Racist white men chase them out of the first town they stop in, but they escape thanks to the intervention of an unknown white woman who somehow causes the mob's car to flip over. Soon after, they encounter the county's racist sheriff, who is eager to enforce a sundown law. Just after sunset, the sheriff's deputies force the travelers into the woods with the intent to lynch them, but the entire group is attacked by vicious monsters. Are you following me, everyone? Atticus, George, and Letty fight their way out, and in the morning, the trio makes their way to an enormous mansion, where they are welcomed by a mysterious white man, William, who greets them warmly.
I should also say that, like, I got these episode summaries from Wikipedia, and I edited them down a little bit, and also added things that I thought were kind of important, like, that the sheriffs are racist. That was just, like, casually left out. I was like, that seems important, guys. All right.
Okay, episode 2. William explains that the mansion is Arnhem Lodge, designed by Titus Braithwaite, a slave trader and the founder of an occult secret society of wizards called the Sons of Adam. George realizes that Atticus is a descendant, through rape, of Titus, and thus a premier member of the Sons. Because of this powerful heritage, Samuel Braithwaite, the current owner of the lodge and leader of the Sons, plans to use and potentially sacrifice Atticus in an upcoming ritual. The white woman who helped the group earlier is revealed to be Samuel's daughter, Christina. She traps the travelers in their respective rooms with magic force fields. They eventually break out and rescue Montrose, played by Michael K. Williams. Samuel stops them, shooting and killing Letty and seriously wounding George. Atticus agrees to cooperate in the ritual to save their lives, but the magic backfires, turning Samuel and the other sons to stone and imploding the mansion. Atticus, a resurrected Letty, and Montrose escape, but George dies.
Ooh, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, look, they know, the listeners know when we say we're going to talk about something, we are not sparing them any spoilers, unfortunately. Yeah.
That was the longest plot summary we've read on the podcast ever. And
I know.
Yet I feel it didn't. There's like a lot of things that we didn't fully touch on in these episodes.
Well, there's so much happening in each episode. It's impossible to believe that they're only an hour long. So let's try and sort of like sort through a lot of our feelings and as much plot as we can. And we're going to start with Natasha. Natasha, like, you have watched this very recently. Your passion for it prompted you to like share that this is like what you were doing on the weekend, on the long weekend. What do you like about Lovecraft Country?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, it was the show that I didn't know that I needed at this time, in this juncture, in my compassion fatigue. I think that, when we talk about how busy the summer has been, over the last couple of weekends, I needed to slow down, which was enough for me just to even have my own rush of grief and impact of, the world is still a dumpster fire, and how do I hold all of this together? Because this is what I get paid to do. And so I needed to escape. And a friend, my publicist actually, had told me about Lovecraft Country. And so I did. I found it on Crave, and I sat and watched it. And it was one of those things where everything that I was feeling, like even the goriness of it, matched what was going on for me, if that makes sense, right? And so that there was an opportunity for this real kind of the monsters and the heroes and the small wins, the chase, and then they'd get away from the bad guys, and then, oh, there they are again. And so it really allowed for me to escape, but I didn't even have to put into words what it is that I was feeling. And I think that, we've been talking about a bit of Black liberation and Black joy, and I haven't felt it, except I felt it this weekend.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense. And especially like all of the work, like so much of your work is situated around combating white supremacy and dealing with the consequences of white supremacy and just so much anti-Blackness and so much inequity. Like this show that so clearly and like it is not attempting to mask the horrors of racism. It's all right there. It's not telling you you're wrong. It's not denying that it happens. Like racism and white supremacy are the great evils of this show.
Absolutely. But then intermixed with music and beauty. I think that visually, the colors that are used, the music, it brings you along in a way that that joy is there. And so it reminded me that they're even within the adversity, to find the joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Lisa, you read the book, so you have like a completely different experience maybe in your own way than all of us.
Yeah, but I think of the four of us, I watch horror movies the most.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. And
well, at least for me anyway.
Yeah, I think what is really interesting is that when you watch horror movies, the whole tension is generally, especially zombie movies. It's not the zombies you have to be afraid of. It's the real people, right? It's the other people you meet along the way, looking at like Walking Dead, right? Like it's the other people. The zombies are pretty easy to handle. And so what I thought was really interesting about the story that was created is that it uses that same tension, but it's that, are monsters scarier or race is scarier? Right? And it's interesting that you don't often see a lot of people of color in horror movies. It's just not, you don't see it a lot. I think that even in the fantasy world, and another thing is H.P. Lovecraft was a famous racist, really bad, like known for his racism. The real author, the American author, which I think they bring up a little bit in the first episode, right? They do bring that up. So even when you're as a person of color who wants to like some horror, some fantasy, you're stuck with only a very few writers, and one of the best is racist. Is it the bad guys or is it just the racism? And that's what makes this story work so well. And that's what, because that's the tension horror always works on, is that horror is always about what are society's fears? What are we fearing? And so we've got all these layers, and we've just got overt racists, right? Like the sheriffs. But then you've got this super white family going, you're related to us? Like there are so many levels of the storytelling here. And but I think that's not even getting close to, as you said, the visuals of the show and how extraordinary it is. So and on one level, it's just like a straight up sort of road trip movie, and then you've got monsters coming out of the dirt. So I was really impressed, is what I have to say.
AG, like that, you don't watch a lot of horror usually, right?
No, never actually. So this is quite
how
shocking
did you feel
on
about
multiple
this?
levels. It was quite shocking on multiple levels to me. I don't know, like I had to sort of rewatch it a couple times in various parts, and because I wanted to just figure out what was going on and make sure I understood, because like the plot moves so fast and there's so many things going on, and it just, this like kind of overwhelming sense of this normalization of racism in the places they're driving through, and just like how everybody accepts it and it's just normal life. And I was thinking about it a lot because, people are talking about that in terms of COVID. Like, is COVID just going to be normalized in our society because people are kind of, eager to get back to normal lives and are just going to kind of prefer to live with it than, try to, do something significant about it because they just want life to be normal again. And so while I was watching this TV show, I was really thinking about that, because you look at it and you're like, how could this have happened? Like, how is this possible that, like there's people, they have colored entrances for people, and, like they are the sundown law or whatever. Like, it's mind blowing and horrible. And I don't know, like to me, it was just hard to shake thinking about that throughout the first couple episodes I watched. I mean, I think, the music director for this series is a genius. I probably haven't seen a better use of music in a TV series. And the visuals, like you said, are amazing. And the horror part of it was just horrifying. But to me, it's like, just the racial horror of it is just, it's a little bit like overwhelming to me as I'm watching the show.
And I think Black Lives Matter in Sundown, it's still happening.
Yes.
It's an interesting time. I mean, they've been working on this show for a long, long time. To have it come out now is quite, quite interesting.
Well, and also I think some of the reviews that I sort of was reading, like of the, people had a chance to see 5 episodes when they were writing their reviews. And I think a lot about, there are still so many people trying to deny that racism and race are factors in things like police brutality and so many, and I mean, you know, usually that's again a part of white supremacy and white supremacists who don't want to admit to any of that or being complicit in it, etc. But like this show has had like a little bit of criticism for its villains being, its racists being cartoonishly racist, but like racists are not hiding. Like there's no sense to me that this is an exaggeration at all. This feels like historically accurate and also accurate to the times we live in right now.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't look any different than the footage I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know where that's coming from, that it's exaggerated.
Some of the reviews that I have linked in the...
Yeah, no, I
piece.
saw those too, and I was quite surprised to read that. I thought, that's the part you're picking at? Like, literally, there are monsters coming up out of the dirt. And you're like, but the white people are a bit cartoonish. How about those big monsters, you know? And anyway...
Yeah. Oh boy. It's so the first episode, like when we like the opening moments of the show open with this like spectacular battle scene that involves monsters and all kinds of stuff, and like
a great dream sequence. It's amazing.
It is a great dream sequence.
Yeah.
But I have to say that opening moment, I was just like, I don't know if this is gonna be for me, guys. Like, who knows? And then I was like,
because of the monster?
No, because of the battle. Like I'm not really into war stuff. But obviously it ends up not really being about that at all. But
nobody's into war stuff. Well, people are.
People are, honestly.
Okay,
like people are super like horny for war sometimes. It's not my thing, but like it's a vibe that some people have. But no, I was grateful for the monsters. As soon as it pivoted. But I also just really love the family vibes and like getting to know all of these characters. And like, I mean, That
was a sexy bedroom morning scene there. That was like, woo.
That was quite the segue.
It was a good.
That was quite the segue.
What? For me or the show?
For you.
Oh, I just remember, I just thought it was just, just those two people just kind of lounging in bed. I thought that was it's just an interesting show pacing wise to go through that extreme, like you said, and then boom, here we are, a loving couple in bed, just kind of.
I mean, I really appreciated that actually. Like I think like Hippolyta is one of my favorite characters in the show. I don't think she's had nearly enough to do yet, and I'm hopeful that she gets more and more to do as the show progresses. Because I think that the character is really fascinating. I think the work that she does is actually like incredibly meaningful. Like in her conversation with George, like you find out that he does this research, but that she writes everything, but she really doesn't get a ton of credit for that. Which I think is, you know, something that a lot of people have seen happen a lot, particularly with like men who are credited as these amazing researchers and writers. And then it turns out like their wives did most of their work for them. I also just love so much her name. The actress's name is Ingenue Ellis, and she spells it Aunjanue, and it's my favorite spelling of ingenue in the whole world. And I just think like everything about her is remarkable.
Do you recognize
and the character
her?
Is great too.
Do you recognize her from the Book of Negroes?
I have never seen that.
Okay, yeah. So the Book of Negroes was Clement Virgo, director from here, or from Canada, and Lawrence Hill, who wrote it. Yeah. And so she was amazing in it. So Book of Negroes, definitely.
Okay, can I just tell you that, did you know that Lawrence Hill's brother's Dan Hill?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes when we touch.
I literally talk about it all the time. And one of the things that my dream scenario is having them in conversation talking about songwriting versus, novel writing. I think it would be so fun.
Honestly, when I found that out, I was just blown away. But
It's a wonderful fact.
it is. And now we really digressed, but
Okay,
anyway.
back to
Back to
Do you have
Ingenue.
Ingenue? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, do all of you have favorite characters or actors in the show?
I have to say Letitia or Letty because, oh my God, I just I feel bad now because her sister really hates her and she didn't come to her mother's funeral. But I just love this character. I love her.
When
I
she
love
gets
her
to
wardrobe. I love the whole thing.
when she runs like to rescue them at the end of the first episode, and she like does that. She's like a championship like high school sprinter or whatever.
Yeah.
And she does that run. That is like one of my favorite. It's a real Final Girl kind of tribute scene, like from a horror film. And the fact that she saves them all, and she routinely continues to save them time and time again. I love it so much.
I really do love having a very equal footing heroine for our horror movies too, right? I like the fact that all three of them are working on this stuff together. I love when she was driving the car. I think that was in the first episode, right? That she had to drive the car to get away. And that scene, actually, the restaurant scene is probably one of the most powerful scenes when she overhears and she just comes booking it from the bathroom. Like, let's get out.
So that's the second time she saved them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
Twice in one
was the
episode.
car chase, it was the restaurant, and then it was the running scene in the woods.
Three.
Yes.
Three saves in the first episode alone.
And so that's why she's called Letitia Effin Lewis. Because
exactly. Yeah.
So good. Yeah. Is she your favorite character?
I like her, but I'm kind of curious about her sister a little bit too.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ruby, I used to have a cat named Ruby as well. But Ruby she's quite lovely and spectacular, and there's something about her, and so I hope that we see more of her, like maybe in episode 4 or something.
AG, what about you? Who's your favorite character or actor?
I was going to say Ruby, the sister character as well. So far, I'm just curious. We don't get to see much of her in the first 2 episodes, but I'm hoping
get to see a lot of her in episode 4.
It's very exciting, honestly. It's very exciting.
How about there's also the unsung Jada Harris, the young actress who plays Diana Freeman, the daughter, and all of her drawings and coloring, and how she kind of moves into, she has this way of kind of doing the transition for some of the story, and or just kind of looking at her artwork and the coloring and the atlas that is used, and her cartoons or her serial sci-fi cartoons that she's sharing. I just thought, oh, who is this kid? Or even just being grossed out about her parents making out.
Yeah, that was funny.
I mean, having to listen to your parents have sex in the morning, like that's what a nightmare, right?
And it's that gross, and then goes in and still does her coloring and does all of that. So I thought it was great. I think she's so sweet. So I'm curious about her too. Mm-hmm. Right.
She's so like she just has like this really lovely vibrancy about her performance too. Like I just how like some people are just always present, always like active, always engaged. Like that's the vibe I get from her.
Yeah. I was also, I was just going to suggest too that going forward, if you're going to continue to watch it, it is worth looking up things about Lovecraft as a writer and the themes he was working on, which are like, there's a lot of his movies out there. Like people still, it's bizarre. He still has quite a hold, especially on sort of young male science fiction fans and things. Lovecraft is still read, even though he died in 1933. And
so he died in 1933, wild racist.
Yeah.
And like people still revere him to this like extent.
Well, I mean, there aren't an awful lot of science fiction writers then, right? He is a really original. I mean, he was a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe himself. But he was really quite fascinated by the idea of like forces from beyond and what they do to you, like how they impact you. Mm-hmm. It's like aliens and different things like that.
But that was the interesting thing, is just that, he is a known racist and his work is racist. And yet, like, this work of art is done by, Black Americans, like the TV part of it anyway.
Well, I think they tried to get at that a little bit at the beginning with when they have to walk from the bus, Atticus and the woman, back into town. And she's like, why do you like these things? And he said, they take you away to another place. They transport you. It just seems like, I know so many people, again, mostly men, who go through this H.P. Lovecraft phase, where that's all they read. And so I do think that's an interesting part of this work as well.
So my dad was a Black man and loved sci-fi. And so I remember as a kid, so my imagination, I wasn't reading the books, but when I would visit him and look on his bookshelf, that there were these pulp fiction book covers and sci-fi stuff. Like, he loved it. And so and also as a Vietnam vet, and so I think that watching Atticus go back into recent memory and have his dreams about the war, and then also I think in episode 2, where that's his nightmare that comes back again, is fighting a Korean woman, actually. In that visual, and it also reminded me of the escapism from my father. And I remember when he passed away and connecting with his sister, and she said that he always had an imagination. And so growing up in North Philly, and again, he was born in the late 1940s. So we're talking about 1955. So he was probably like a 6 or 7 year old in this storyline, but that was for him sci-fi, even as a grown up into his 60s. We were sharing books on sci-fi.
That's so nice.
Do you like reading sci-fi? Do you read?
No. And, I have a recommendation for the one kind of series of sci-fi that I've read and that actually my dad and I shared. But no, it isn't. And also the horror stuff. No, the only time that I see horror stuff is with you, Lisa. Yeah. and Jordan Peele's horror stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's where what Jordan Peele feels as well, is that great tension, is the, who do you have to be afraid of? Is it the monsters, or is it just that horrible person?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, like, we've talked a little bit before. It's not the same at all, but like in terms of consuming art by artists who hate you, and hate your existence, and, are actually like, I mean, I think all of us have, I'm sure, likely read books by racists and sexists, and, I certainly have read a ton of books by people who definitely hate fat people. And it's very clear very quickly. Like, people don't realize as writers when they're telling on themselves that they hate fat people. But let me say, most writers hate fat people. And it's a really frustrating thing that you sort of have to, like, you acknowledge it, you decide whether, you decide what you're going to do with it. And then oftentimes you move it to one side so you can continue existing in an otherwise sort of like typically escapist kind of story, and it's not great. But I would assume, like, a lot of, at least a lot of folks that we know, and particularly the four of us, have sort of encountered these situations in different ways in the art that we consume.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, they even said it. I mean, in the story, when they're pulling the books off the shelf, there's no one to complain to. There's no one to take your issue to, or, choose to read another author. I mean, that was there. And I even was listening to Keep It, and Ira Madison was talking about Lovecraft Country and saying he grew up reading Lovecraft, and all his friends did too. So I don't know, maybe someone needs to become a new Lovecraft, or maybe that's not possible.
I think it's happening. I think there's actually, like, I follow a few different writers on Twitter, and certainly the Twitter account Well-Read Black Girl has done a lot of great promotions of up and coming like black Afrofuturist kind of like sci-fi and fantasy and stuff. And there was actually a recent huge feature in the New York Times about Indigenous writers writing in like, you know, futuristic fantasy and sci-fi, and, you know, creating this whole new genre of fantasy and science fiction. You know, and I think one of the quotes I think is from, I don't want to misquote the person, but they were talking about, you know, like they have survived genocide. Like these are 100% people who know what it is to sort of live in a future and create new futures for themselves that people are constantly trying to take away from them. Yeah. And I think that I just think there's like so much, maybe like, yeah, there's just so much more interesting writing to come in this genre as it diversifies.
Well, and there's so much, it's so ripe with horror, right? Because there are so many things that are just so horrific to have to accept. And you can put that in a horror story, right? Like it's perfect for it. And it should scare you. You should watch it and be afraid. Mm-hmm. There.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What has been like was there a particular scene in either of the first two episodes that anybody found kind of traumatizing or particularly troubling?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, the whole sundown scene where they have to drive out of the state before sundown and they're being chased by the police, like that was really, I found that just hard.
I think, yeah, the scene and the way that the sheriff wanted Atticus or Tick to talk to him, you know, to degrade himself for him, and how everyone understood that that's what was going on. And I felt like, I mean, I don't know because I haven't lived this, but it felt watching it that there was an understanding from the family that I'm watching you do this and I'm not going to think about it later. Like, I know this is something you have to do right now. But, you know, I won't think differently of you. I don't know. That's what it felt like to me.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, there was this reality that there's that undercurrent of not belonging. And in many scenes, it was there. And I rewatched, once I got the invitation, I thought, okay, I need to watch these first two episodes again. And Keisha, my daughter, came home, and so I said, you got to watch this with me. And it was when they went into the restaurant and sat down, and the two, the patron and the waiter, the way that they stared at them, Keisha said to me, oh yeah, that still happens. And so that happens for her, especially she spends a lot of time out in the valley in Abbotsford, and that she comes home and tells these kind of stories. And so that there was this undercurrent. And then when we think about when they're at the Braithwaite house and they're having their meal, and then there's that quietness that happens where it's just like, you know what, let's not cause any waves, let's just stay here and eat our, you know, so that we don't tip them off. And the way that their mood changed, even though they were kind of messed up around not having a memory about what had happened the night before in the woods, they knew enough that it was time to code switch. And you know, then going into the village when they were in Lovecraft and Artem, and dealing with, you know, the so-called sheriff, and the conversation that she had, which was the, you know, what do we say? Do we say double entendre, where she talks about the black bears and then she talks about the blacks, and you know, that they need to go back before sundown, but just kind of all of that. You know, two black women sitting on the couch watching this, and it was like, shit, yeah, this kind of double messaging, reading between the lines, are we safe? That was scary, and because we do it all the time, you know. And remember, what I do is I am speaking predominantly to white groups of folks about systemic racism, and so depending on who's in the room, I get that vibe. So it was scary, and is often why I don't do this training on my own anymore.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot to think about for you.
Yeah.
So you want to continue on with the series though? You want
Absolutely.
Like, how is it for
Absolutely.
you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's validating. I think that when it's what we're feeling and seeing and experiencing, and so it's 1955 or it's 2020, right? There's no difference in this, right? And so I think that sometimes we are wanting to point to the past and that those days are over. Remember when Barack was around and we were post-racial for a minute there, right?
Yeah, hot minute there.
For a hot minute. And so the reality is that it has not changed, right? The lynching, the forest scene, that is happening in the streets every day as people are marching, and the hot spots and the documentation. What I didn't say, what we haven't said is I was also listening to Black Lives Matter memoir while on that weekend too. And so I was hearing about the birth of Black Lives Matter and then watching this film. And so it was really, this kind of marrying of all of these worlds and saying, we have not moved very far on the dial. And slavery and code switching and survival is where we're at right now. And so to me, that undercurrent and reflecting it is so important to have these conversations that we're having, but it's not separate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we know much Misha Green? What else has she done?
Well, so she did a show called Underground
Railroad, and it was very well received and was canceled after 2 seasons.
Yeah. She started out writing on the TV show Heroes and like a superhero TV show.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then she co-created Underground, which, yes, about the Underground Railroad, and it was canceled after 2 seasons. And Journey Smollett starred in the Underground as well, I believe. And she specifically wanted Journey for Lovecraft as well. And they've continued that relationship as sort of like a director, muse, collaborative kind of thing. I feel like the vision that we see from her for Lovecraft is it's a singular vision. Like, this is a remarkable thing to watch, because even though like having to balance so many different types of story and so many different sort of like subgenres of television and film, and bring them all together and make it cohesive, like that's how does one's brain even attempt to? It just feels like such an ambitious show. And so when I read like 1 or 2 reviews that like said that the show lacked awe, there are revelations but seldom awe. And I thought I mean, I'm not disputing this person's analysis because that's their experience of the show. But it was the New Yorker piece. Lauren Michelle Jackson wrote it. And but I just thought, I am in awe. I am truly in awe of this show, like every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen anything quite like this before.
I mean, to me, I was also going to mention the scene at the very end of episode 2 where they play Whitey's on the Moon over the scene.
Oh, yeah.
Of the house. The Grand Wizards or whatever doing their sacrifice. And there's so many layers to that, because it's like a historical callback. It's like, kind of, and it speaks to today about like Elon Musk being the richest man in the world and going to Mars, right? Like it's just this like perfect kind of point at the end of the episode.
I'm always intrigued by these secret societies, because I mean, oh my God, it's just so much work, so many things to do, like these dinner parties, and then you're taking your liver out. Like, it's just a lot. Like,
you know what? White men will do anything to protect their power, and they will have an elaborate dinner party that they have not organized but they have, had their staff design for them. They like so much of what just whiteness is like, white supremacy is really just like a lot of people doing anything they can so that they can hold on to power. And it's amazing to me. Like, I think about a lot of cults are really white supremacist in action. Like the Nexium cult is kind of like white supremacy in action. Mm-hmm. There's so many, it's just, and like, even just like someone as stupid and horrible as, oh my God, why is his name just falling out of my head? The hippie killer.
Charles Manson?
Charles Manson. Like, a lot of people really want to brush aside his like whole thing was white supremacy. Like, yes, he wanted to have, like,
he wanted to cause a race war. That's literally
but people always want to just like focus on how he like had some celebrities killed and stuff. His whole thing was having a race war. Like, he was anyway. I just and
that's
so
why
many
he
people
killed the people.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, and so many white people and white celebrities in Hollywood like were totally fine with his vision of everything because he was gonna get them access to drugs and girls, and they're like, okay, well, his white supremacy just goes hand in hand, like crazy Charlie. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean it makes sense. I mean, the secret society stuff is just like, I know we're supposed to be a bit like, ooh, but I'm always a bit, oh my, do you guys don't have hobbies? Like, is this your only hobby? Like, this is like Eyes Wide Shut stuff. Like, what happens to you at a certain point? Do you just
at
get
least
so
in Eyes
bored?
Wide Shut they had sex, I think.
But then they murdered people.
Well, but at least they had sex. I don't think Masons are having sex with each other.
I don't know what goes on there. You're not allowed to know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, I feel like we barely even scratched the surface, but we've also been recording for well over an hour. So.
There's no way to get people to understand unless until they see it. Mm-hmm. It's just
but everyone should see it. So
yes. It's so fantastical. You have to see it.
It pops.
Pops.
Hey, totally pops.
Yeah. Popping.
Just 1,000 little pops and big pops and exploding pops. We also love to leave our episodes on stuff we recommend. So, Natasha, as our guest of honor, would you like to go first?
Yes, I would love to go first. And I think that during this pandemic, it has felt a little dystopian, that there has been this idea of the sci-fi novel. And the one series that I read and was introduced to Octavia E. Butler, and I keep thinking about the Parable of Sower. And that story takes place in 2024, and it's Pacific Northwest. Ooh. And it's a 15-year-old young woman in California. And as the world becomes a dumpster fire, they travel up north. And so she is finding out who she is and her own powers in that. And I also, so that there's that book. And Octavia E. Butler has passed away, Black woman writer. But there's also a podcast. So it's like a book club. So if you wanted to read or listen to Parable of Sower, and then they discuss each chapter in a podcast that is with Adrienne Marie Brown, who's a very dynamic anti-oppression trainer, speaker, writer, and Tashi Regan. And so find the podcast and the book.
All of those things sound like they are happening right now. So I'm just going to call it that she was just writing the future. And that's cool.
Yeah.
Lisa, would you like to go next?
Sure. So there was a Danish political drama called Borgen from 2010, but it just came to Netflix now. So the story was written about the first Danish female prime minister, but the show only beat reality by a few months because then in 2011, a real female prime minister was elected, and now they have a second one. But anyway, we have this really amazing behind-the-scenes political drama about Danish politics, and what it feels like to be the first woman prime minister. Like she kind of squeaked in, making a coalition government. And she rides her bike sometimes to work. And she's still like, one of my favorite scenes is that like her whole family, she's got school age kids, her husband, and they come, it's time for Christmas shopping. And she's like, yeah, but the budget, like my budget bill's crumbling. And they're like, you promised we'd go Christmas shopping. So she literally leaves work to go to a Christmas market with her phone.
Amazing.
And takes calls. So I think that they really did a super job, which apparently, weirdly, I read was all male writing room. So I find that quite fascinating, unless Denmark's even like a million times more progressive than I ever had an idea, because it's really understanding about how she's trying to balance this role of wanting to be, this mother still and wife, but also run a country.
Huh. Well, it sounds interesting. Yeah. It's called Borgen. Cool. AG, what about you?
I keep returning to watching Studio Ghibli movies just as escapism, and something that is totally different from what is happening in reality. But I rewatched Howl's Moving Castle the other day. It's about a Milner who gets turned into a witch, and it's
gotta hate when that happens.
Fantasy adventure, and I loved it. It was great. Highly recommend
awesome.
it.
I also really want us to do Kiki's Delivery Service this Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I am going to recommend a book by it's their first graphic novel. Her name is Rumi Hara, and I was really lucky to have a chance to interview her about it. It's a book called Nori, and it's this 3-year-old Japanese girl and her grandmother, and their adventures that they have both together and separate. And Rumi uses a lot of sort of like references to Japanese myths and Asian folklore and No theater, and also studied like English literature, and then taught herself, like she's a self-taught artist. And the work is so beautiful, the stories are so wonderful, and it's very loosely based and inspired by herself as like a little girl being raised by her 2 grandmothers while her mom went out to work. Her mom was one of the only women in the area who had a job outside the home in 1985 or 83 or whatever. I think it was 85. And anyway, it's wonderful. I love it so much. It's very magical. It's called Nori, and the artist's name is Rumi Hara.
Wow, what a lot of great recommendations for everybody.
So excited. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us. Oh my God. Such meaty subject matter.
Oh yeah. So thank you again.
Thank you. And
thank you.
I look forward to watching the rest of the episodes too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. Do you want people to come and find you online, or would you prefer they ignore you?
Absolutely. So you can find me on, it's Natasha Tony on a lot of the social media if you want to follow me and my activism. And then there's Elevate Inclusion Strategies. And so there's a website. There's also the Facebook and Twitter under Elevate as well. So you can see the work that myself and my team are doing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. You can hang out with us on social media as well. We have Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You could listen to us on iTunes and Spotify and a bunch of other places. Rate us 5 stars, please. We like it.
5 stars, like a general. I always say that, and I don't know why, because I don't even know any 5-star generals. But thanks, everyone. Andrea Gin is our producer and co-host of Pop This. We are into the year 674 of the podcast session at home. So thanks for joining us every week.
Yeah, we love growing old with you all separate in our homes. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.